So if I show you this in action, if I change, so we've heard the 500 zombies. If I change that to clowns, you'll see that this very quickly flashes orange and then back to green. So I've got it set up at the moment within this grid so that as soon as I change my English text, it will automatically generate a Amazon Poly version of the audio. So if I click on this,
blow up 500 clowns to complete the mission.
Okay, so now that's automatically changed that. Now, how these automations run is totally up to you. I've set it on an automatic creation, but you can set it on a button press. You can set it in a number of different ways. So it's totally up to you how you want to work that. But the important thing to point out here is that we've got this here then. So now we can see that the Spanish is currently out of date because the Spanish is related to the English. So I've got Spanish here, and then I've got Spanish audio in this column here. So if I were to then change this, so again, so people can work directly within Gridley, or you can choose to create an Excel file, which can then be sent to the LSP for them to translate and then send back to you, which is all very much, it's all tracked as well. So if somebody were to change content while a file was up for translation, then that will automatically be flagged when it comes back in saying, this has changed in the meantime, what would you like to do? So yeah, so if I then change this to payaso up here, which is, I suppose maybe the Spanish for clown, you'll see this is now currently up to date. So again, it's kind of making sure that, you know, stuff, if you were to change something, that anything that's dependent on that is aware that there's been some kind of change and therefore then can then flow it downwards. So what you can see here is now this Spanish audio is currently out of date. So this will still say zombies.
Explota 500 zombies.
So that's currently set as zombies at the moment. So I've got this one over here. So this is the Spanish audio. The way I've set it up is that it won't actually fire it until I click on this Boolean here. So I've set up a condition which is don't do anything unless something happens on this button on this Boolean check here. So if I then click on that, it should hopefully change this to green, which it has do. So this should now say payaso.
Explota 500 payaso para completar la misión.
Okay, so within Gridley, you can very much kind of link all of this together. Now, as a result of having this, you can then, obviously, if you can then set up an automation to then fire, once Spanish audio, if there's been a change in that column, it can then be a case of, if this column shows a change, I want this action to happen. So if I very quickly go into automations up here, if I add an automation here, and I call it XX, okay, so I can have these triggers. So these triggers are fired however you want. So we've seen one that automatically fires when a record is updated. So if I select, so again, so you can do these on records, you can do them on columns, you can do them on when tickets are created. So tickets are a way of communicating within Gridley, but you could then set it up. So if you guys use Discord or Slack, you can set up a trigger so that when a question is asked within Gridley, it will then fire something to a Slack channel or potentially send a Jira ticket, for example. So if I select ticket created, I can then choose what I then want to do. So when a ticket's created, I want to then do a thing. So when a record's updated, I can look on a particular column. So I want to see when the Spanish changes, for example. So when the Spanish changes, I'd like to do a thing, and that thing is then added here. So this is then your actions. So you could then set a value. So you could have a set value, which is when the Spanish changes, I want to output to another column who made that change and any other information you want to include in that payload. So that set value, for example, is this. So which column you want to output it to, let's just say product name. And then you can then choose to then change the cell value. And here's where you can then put those parameters down. So you can then say, I want to have this quality, this content, etc. So this is a set value type. Then if I add a step here, so we've got set value, you can have a formula editor within within this as well. The only continue if is if this first step has been activated, but only continue if, for example, if you've changed the text from zombie to clowns, only continue if there's a value that says the word clowns, for example, within there, then you want it to do something else. That's very specific as well, but it allows you to kind of very much look at, is something set in a certain way. So for example, only continue if that value is currently set as up to date, for example, then do this next step. So again, you've got these kind of logic actions here. You can also run lambdas through Gridley as well. So you may well have your own Amazon instance anyway, which you can then pipe into. But certainly if you wanted to use the Gridley one, so you didn't have to then create a backend to run that, you could certainly do that. And so then we have our actual kind of steps here. So we've got sending a web request. So there could well be something along those lines. Slack message, Discord, Jira ticket, etc. So you can say, you know, so whenever something changes, you know, at a certain point, you might then say anything that changes within the English, I want to make sure that that's being followed in some way by maybe sending a Jira ticket or whatever it might be. Then we have Asana as well. And then we have some machine translation options here as well. So you can use Google and Amazon and then GPT-4 if you wanted. Then we have more text processing here. Then we can run sentiment analysis is another thing here, and OCR2. And then we've got some AI prompting stuff as well, which I can show you a bit more about in a second. So again, so you've got all these types of things that you can kind of run, and you can kind of create these flows that will then happen. So yeah, so that's kind of automations, just kind of touching upon that.